Hey everybody, it's Nathan Cool, and this is a follow-up video from my last where I showed how I use the Rove light to light a room. I want to concentrate on the trick known as the Flash-Ambient Blend. Now this is mostly for real estate, but you can use this for a lot of other stuff too, where you want a natural looking shot, but you can't just use natural light. You also have to use some flash also to start filling in some of the shadows, but the flash may be overpowering. So when we shoot real estate, one of the problems that we have is houses weren't really meant to be shot from the inside. So we've got a lot of ambient light that's flooding in. But if we try to fill that with a flash, sometimes it looks too flashy. So as you may recall from my last video, I was using the Rove light to fill in a lot of this, and that made it even more flashy. It cut down on some of my time to be able to make the windows look really well, but there were some other tricks I could do, and I'll have some future videos on that. Now, this technique that I'm going to be showing you today isn't something that I invented. A lot of people are doing this. In fact, there's some great videos out there by a guy named Rich Baum, B-A-U-M. Google him, you'll find a great YouTube channel to follow as well with his videos. But I wanted to show you, if you recall, what we had from the footage from the last one, and this is what we're going to work with. So the first thing was the ambient shot. You can see that I exposed for the room, but this is typical. Like if you just shot, even using your cell phone, you'd see a lot of blown out windows, some very harsh shadows, a lot of light coming in where we don't necessarily want it. This wouldn't be acceptable for MLS. So the next shot here was the flash shot, and this was using the Rove light, and this was great. I lit up a lot of stuff, and I was able to get a view of the outside, but a couple things here. One, it looks like a flash was shot here. There's a little bit of light also missing off the countertops, and I've got this bad reflection that I'm showing over here on the top by where the window is. So I needed to correct that, so I took even another shot here, which was just like that shot with the Rove light, but without it being flashed. And that then gave me something to edit in those windows. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take those three images. It's concentrating mostly on the Flash-Ambient Blend. A lot of people are calling it Flambient. But I'm going to show you the editing process for that. So a couple other tricks along the way, and let's get started. Ready? Here we go. So first, a couple things about my gear. So to be able to do this and to make it a lot easier for post-processing, I'm using a bamboo tablet. This allows me to paint, and I'm using my right hand. I'm right-handed to be able to use that. And I've got mice that I've got on both sides of my keyboard, and that allows me at any time to be able to just grab a mouse real quick. It might take a while for you to get used to, but I found it to be very useful, not just in the work that I do for real estate, but a lot of other work as well. And then of course I've got my keyboard positioned just right in front of it, and that allows me to get to some very quick keyboard strokes. It allowed me to then paint where I need to very quick. The bamboo tablet is touch sensitive, so I've got a lot of control over what I'm doing. And then of course the mouse is there if I need to go ahead and grab something real quick. And I do a lot of keyboard shortcuts anyways, so I save myself from having to grab the mice quite a bit. I'm also using a very large monitor. This is a BenQ. That's because I do a lot of other post-processing, not just for real estate. This is probably overkill for what we're going to be doing today, but especially as my eyes get older, I do like having a bigger monitor. So anyways, let's get started. Okay, so let's start out with the ambient shot, and then next to it, down here, if you look on my film strip, there was the outdoor shot, two of those, so we've got the flash. First thing I like to be able to do is correct everything. I've got a preset over here. I recommend that you make your own as well. One, since I'm using a Tachyna lens, I just labeled it as Tachyna 16 to 28. I hit that, and look, it took out all the distortion. Reason being is that I've got some things in this preset. Basically says enable profile corrections, which then takes the warp out of the picture. As you can see, that's what that did. Remove any chromatic aberration. Those would be those little red edges that you find on some stuff. And of course, doing the vertical. If I had that off, it wasn't quite vertical. This corrected, and I've got some great looking geometry. Now what I do is I take that and I say develop settings, and copy all those settings. Now select the other pictures that you're going to edit, develop settings, and paste settings. So now we've got three pictures that are going to look a lot alike when it comes to their geometry. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is taking these into Photoshop and aligning them up there. Now if you remember from my last video, I wasn't using a Cam Ranger, and so because of that, I didn't have correct alignment all the time. I can't guarantee myself that. It's going to be very close, but not exact. So to make sure these align very well using Photoshop's algorithm, I need to do something here to this shot. This is that shot that didn't have any flash. This is going to be real hard for Photoshop to align. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the brush tool, I'm going to up the exposure, and I'm going to go ahead and just take and say, okay, you know what? expose a big area here. I'm not going to use any of this at all, but just go ahead and use this to help align yourself, Photoshop, when you need to. So okay, we've got that. That's all I need to do. Now I'm going to take these 3 pictures and I'm going to select them, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Now what that'll do is it'll bring up the Photoshop program, and right now it's loading those and doing its deal. It's loading them up as individual layers. And this is where all the magic is going to start happening. The next thing I have to do after it loads its layers is I need to align all of these images. And you can see over here, there's 3 layers. That's fantastic. But to make sure they're aligned, you could select them all and go up to Edit and then Auto Align Layers. I've made myself an action in here, and you can go ahead and Google Photoshop Actions. It'll save you tons of time. It's just my F2 key in this case. I hit F2, and there's our wheel spinning, and it's aligning my layers. Boom, you can see, sure enough, there's some alignment that was missing here. So let's go ahead and fill that. View, fill, boom. Now, got the ambient on top, that's fine. What I want on top eventually is that layer for the outside that I need to correct. And if you remember, that's going to be correcting those reflections. See those bad reflections over there? So we're going to be correcting that. So for right now, I'm going to go Alt-L, which brings up the layer menu, M for mask, and H for hide all. I'm going to do the same thing on this layer, but this was our ambient. But what I'm going to first do is I'm going to set that to luminosity. That then just controls the angle of light. But look what happened here too, because of that luminosity. The color here changed on the cabinets. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually be duplicating that layer. I'm going to be calling that one as a normal, and that's going to be my color. Alt-L, M, hide all. I'll get to that in a second. And here's my ambient shot. I'm going to against Alt-L, M-H. Boom, I'm hiding all. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my brush tool. And an important thing here is to make sure that brush flow is set very low. I've got it up here. You can see it's set to about 6%. Now, when you're painting on a mask like this and it's all black mask, you want to paint on, make sure your colors are over here are white. If they're not, you can hit default by hitting the D, and then X. If you notice, I'm hitting X on my keyboard. It's changing those colors back and forth. So a real quick one, D for default colors. It's white and black. As long as you're on a mask, it's going to know that. And then X back and forth. Anyways, let's get started. I've got my brush tool selected. I'm going to start painting in some ambient. You can see where I'm going here. We've got some ambient stuff starting to show up. For instance, let me get underneath the counters here. I'm going to use that to brighten that up a little bit. Now I've got ambient light coming in. Now I've got a mixture of now what was just not a flash shot, but I'm bringing in some of that ambient shot too. Look over here at the trash can. And by the way, I left my flip-flops on the floor over here. This is my house. This isn't really for MLS. I'm going to get a little bit more shine on the floor. I like that. I know some people cringe at it, but I love it. It actually shows, hey, these are great hardwood floors. I keep my house nice and clean. It's ready to have a photo shoot. As I'm now lightening up, look at this, I'm going to get the ceiling. A lot of ambient. I'm going to start painting up there. Now, I'm talking through this. It normally wouldn't take this long. I would be just about done and ready to send this out the door. But look what I'm doing here, giving a natural look to this, and you can go as far as you want. Now remember when I said that the cabinets weren't going to be the correct color? Well, I'm going to go up to that layer. That's this one here. It's in normal mode. I'm going to paint just a little bit there. And you might wonder, why didn't I do this then just to begin with for the whole ambient thing? That's because most of the light was still very good, and I could just use that luminosity layer that I did down here. So anyways, I've got a combination of stuff here. That's great. I've got that ambient. Maybe paint just a little bit more in here. Once again, you can go as far as you want to with it and bring that in to make it look as natural. For instance, over here, this should probably be a lot more in shadow. So I'm bringing in a lot more shadow, maybe a little bit more light, that comes over here. A little bit too much there. Alt-Z, Control-Z is undo. Now, I want to fix this reflection up here. Now, normally we wouldn't need to do that, especially if we use some other techniques of doing Flash-Ambient, and I'll show some of those where you can just use speed lights. You're going to get probably some better results in some cases, but it'll take you a little bit longer while you're on location to get that. So anyways, I use the zoom tool. I'm also holding down my space bar so I get my hand and I can drag that over where I can see it. Now I'm going to go over here and use my brush tool on that mask, and I'm going to start painting in where that reflection is. See that? The reflection's going away. Now I have to be careful, because if I went over here, look what it did. See, it darkened that up too much. There's a couple things I could do. One, I could go ahead and grab my quick selection tool. I'd go to my regular layer down here so that it knows what to grab, and I could probably just grab this whole area. See how it grabbed that area? See the marching ants? And I could go over here, hit X to reverse the colors on the mask, hit delete, and it brought in the whole thing. Boom, I just fixed all those reflections. Didn't have to worry about it. Now I'm going to hit X again to get where I'm painting and go back over here and boop, 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 boop. Excuse me, I didn't have my brush tool selected. There's my brush tool, and I'm going to go ahead and just brush in some of this to fix this part of the reflection here that was coming in. I could have done a quick select over here too, but that's just fine. A couple things here, there's some rough edges. If this wasn't for MLS, then I'd really seriously be doing some closer editing on that. But view fill, let's take a look at that. Not too bad. So once again, if we take a look at what was just our flash shot, which was this, and now to what we have, that's looking a little more natural, kind of good. Now this is a little bit bright over in this area compared to over here, so let's bring in a little bit more ambient. Once again, we're just having some fun with this. I wouldn't necessarily be taking this much time just for an MLS picture, but it depends too. If this was going to be the showcase picture for the house, I might want to consider that. Now, if I think I got too much ambient here, just go ahead and hit E. That's your eraser tool. I've got my flow up here to 8. That's fine. I'm in a hurry, so I'm just going to say, okay, let's just erase a little bit of that ambient from up here on those cabinets. Done. Okay, now I'm ready to go ahead and take this to its final step. Select all those layers, right click, flatten image, Control S, save. Now that it's saved it, I go back to Lightroom and there it is. It loaded it automatically. Now a couple of things that have to be done here. You notice here that I have an edge here of white. That's because the layers had to be aligned in Photoshop. Once again, if you use a Cam Ranger, you wouldn't run across this. See my last video for my reasons why I don't have a Cam Ranger yet. Anyways, I have another preset that I'm going to go ahead and add. It's called RE Full Bump. I got this idea also from Rich Baum. Once again, you can find his stuff on YouTube. I'm just going to go ahead and hit that preset and boom, look at the punch that it added. Real quick then, I'm going to go ahead and take and just bring a crop in so I get rid of those edges that showed up. And then I just do some final touches. It's like, yeah, that's probably a little too rich, so I'll up the blacks a little bit. I want a little bit of highlights in there so it looks a little bit better. Bring up the whites. I like a lot of white bright stuff, and a lot of my clients like that too. Clarity's fine. I'm also going to bring up just a little punch in the curves here, so I'm bringing up a little white there. Now that is a pretty good looking picture. That's deliverable. File, export, and I'm going to export out there as picture number 1. Boom, done. So that's the basics of the Flash-Ambient Blend. Now, I did a lot of other stuff in here because this particular picture had some challenges. I shot with so much flash power so I could get a good exposure of the outside that I had those reflections I had to deal with. So I had to have another frame that I dealt with there as well. But the take-home point on this, there's two things I'd like to really point out. One, you get a natural looking shot if you take just 2 layers, flash layer and an ambient layer. You can just do some post-processing real quick in Photoshop and boom, you've got it looking the way that you want to look, as natural as you want it. 2, make some presets and actions too. Those presets and actions can really save your butt. They save a lot of time. Got some great input from Rich Baum on these also, so I'm using some of his. But also the actions. For instance, I have to auto-align my layers. And even if you do use a Cam Ranger, it might be something you might want to still consider. And if you do, I just made a quick action using the F2 key that does everything. And if you want a tutorial on how to do actions, let me know and I'll go ahead and I'll make a video on that. But anyways, that's all I've got for now on this. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, no problem. It doesn't cost you anything, and as soon as videos like this are posted, you'll be the first to know. If you have some input, you'd like to follow me a little bit more, I have some information on my blog, and that's all at nathancoolphoto.com. And yes, that really is my last name. If anybody's interested, I'll tell you where it actually came from. But anyways, not to belabor the point and to cut this one as short so we can go ahead and get on with the work that we need to do, this is Nathan Cool. For now, get out there and shoot something. Thanks a lot for watching.